October of 46, I went to the recruiting station. I was just turned 17, and I signed up for the Navy. And when it came to really getting in, it depended on a signature by one of my parents. But my parents wouldn't sign. My mother didn't want me to go in. So it took me till February to get my father to sign before I was really inducted in. And then I left early February, went down to Baltimore. Went down to Baltimore for a physical. And the guy says to me, you didn't pass. I said, why? He said, you need a tooth repaired. I said, my teeth are all repaired. I don't have any fat cavities. Oh, yeah, you have a huge cavity in the back tooth. I said, that's not a cavity, that's a brown filling. He looked at it again, he said, yeah, he said, that's not a cavity, that's a filling. And I'm sorry I missed that. Yeah. So anyhow, I left there, my train that night for Chicago, Great Lakes Naval Training Center, and went through basic training. That's about a three-month course, February, March, April. Well, what's in basic training is they teach you that to be your own person. You got to wash your own clothes, you got to press your own clothes, and you got to pass inspection when you do it. And you're training how to work together by marching and drilling, just like the Army. We had some other things you could get into, and I get into color guard, a marching group, a colored guard, that had to get up early in the morning and march 2 miles to put the flag up at the main building in Great Lakes, then march back again, and then get your breakfast, and then start the routine. We went to school too. We had a lot of classwork. A lot of classwork about the Navy, the history. They taught you gunnery and all that crap, and how to maneuver ships and boats, and also about how to sight other ships and craft at sea at night. You had to look at a dark screen with an imitation ocean surface with a model of a ship, and it was very, very dark and dull, and you had to identify the ship. After basic training, I came home on leave, and I was late getting back, which means I was AWOL, and absent without leave.
Right.
And I was stuck on a train that was stuck in Ohio, and I couldn't get back. And if I had a way to get back, I didn't have the money to pay for it. And so I had to stay on the train. I got back to the base, I guess, maybe a couple hours late. And one of the guys said to me when I went in the barracks, he said, you missed it, Zig. I said, I missed what? He said, they took the draft for the aviation mechanic. They already left. They come in and called their names out, and they left.
Aww.
About an hour after you checked in.
Yeah.
So I missed that. Now that I missed the draft for the aviation mechanic, I had to be reassigned. Well, the first school was called Steam Engineering. It was all about the steam powering plants, the propulsion powering plants, which was, we had 2 boilers at the school, the exact models of what are in the ones at sea. The only difference is the size of the ship determines the size of the boiler. So these were relatively small, had everything that even the battleships had. The battleships had 2 engine rooms, and they had 4 boilers to each engine room. And he taught you how to operate, maintain it, fire it, and run it, stop and start it. And when when I was finished with that, they graduated from that, so to speak. They offered a few of us, not all the class, only the ones who were in the top grades. And I took it, and they offered me diesel repair. So I went to a diesel repair school. I was assigned to a destroyer, and I went down to Norfolk, Virginia, and reported to USS Power, DD-839. And just a funny little thing happened when I reported there. Now, I was already in the Navy almost a year, and I should be used to all the Navy protocol and be able to recite it easily. So when you go aboard ship, any ship or any station, you always salute the officer of the day, and then you state your reason for being here. And you salute the officer of the day and say, reporting for duty. So, and I stalled. I couldn't remember my name. So luckily, it was inside my coat. I would open my coat up, my pea coat, and it's stenciled in there, my name. So I told him my name, and I could see the look on his face. Boy, we're getting another dud. So I stayed with the generator on the Power, and we made a trip to the Caribbean. We went to Charlotte, Amelia, St. Thomas. We were down to the Virgin Islands, hit almost every island down there. We went down to Trinidad, and we went over to Tobago, and they claimed there that was Columbus's first landing on the New World. There was a little bay there that he sailed his ship into, and we went swimming there. It was so clear, you could see a half a dollar. It's about 100 feet deep. You can see it shining down. It was so clear. And it seems like every time we would stop at an island, I would be assigned to shore patrol. I didn't have a lot of money to go touring them anyhow, so that was fine because I learned a lot and I got around a lot because I usually was assigned with an Army escort. Yeah, we would run on an Army Jeep. We'd check the bars and stuff to see that there was a lot of bars were off limits to military personnel, any American personnel, and we would go in there and check it out, make sure that they didn't have any in there, because if they did, they would keep them on restriction, and they always ask you. It was always hot too. They'd say, "You want a Coke?" And you say, "Yeah, sure." So they'd get us a Coke, but they'd forget to tell us that they poured half the Coke out and poured the other part full of rum. When we started to leave from there, we went to Panama. There's a small town right at the mouth of the Panama Canal called Cristobal. We stopped in Havana. That was a critical time in Cuba. Guantanamo Bay, which was on the other end of Cuba. Batista was still president then at that time. And of course, we cruised up the coast to home to Norfolk. Then after that, we come back, and of course, it was Christmas time. And just about not everybody got leave, but I got a couple of days leave for Christmas. While I was in Chicago, I bought an engagement ring for her. Then we talked about getting married seriously. We got married April 28, 1948. Roy Ansminger was my best man, who was my best friend. And Eleanor was maid of honor. We didn't have much of a marriage, just in front of the preacher, and that was it. And my parents and her parents were both there. I think I had 5 days leave altogether. I had a day or so before the marriage, before the wedding, and we went on a honeymoon that was only a couple of days. We were on a honeymoon in New York City. We saw most of the sights, like the Empire State Building and all that stuff, and the Statue of Liberty. We went out to the Statue of Liberty. We saw The King and I, a play downtown, and I had an Aunt Hattie, who was my grandfather's sister, who lived in New York City, but almost all her life. She stayed single. She lived. I don't know whether it's not really Upper Manhattan. She was up close to the park. Robert Merrill was a big hit on television, which television was very new, and it was just getting bigger, growing at that time. And he had a show, a morning show. She got us tickets for it, which was no easy thing. Probably the next day, she took us out to dinner at some hotel with a way up, high up in the hotel, where you had to see all over New York City. I'd never met her before either. I just called her up and introduced myself, and she said, I told us how to get to her apartment, and we went up to her apartment. That's when she did all this finagling around. We went at the Mediterranean. The first port of stop on the way over was Lisbon, Portugal. The beautiful buildings and glass blowers. They made figurines and horses and all kinds of stuff out of blown glass, which I got some of. And Casbah was just a narrow street with a lot of prostitutes and a lot of restaurants on. And you call it a restaurant, it was just a hole in the wall. There's really something else.
Nothing else.
There's nothing special. Then we went from there, we went to Gibraltar. And we had a get fuel. The one night we were there, it was January the 12th. The guy come into the shower room while I was coming off leave. I went to get a shower, not leave, but have to watch. I was down in the engine room. And I was taking a shower, and he said, hey, Zig, said, you got a telegram. Said, you want me to read it to you? You want to read it when you come out? I said, I'll read it to me. I don't know what it is. So it was announcing Debbie's birth. So that's how I found that out. In Algiers, the locals stole the bags of clothing that were in the laundry to be laundered. They told a couple of them. And a day later, we saw a guy walking down the street with one of the mattress covers on, never took the name off. He just cut holes to make a robe out of it and left the name on. From there we jumped off from there, from Tunis. We went to Malta. I didn't go ashore there. We anchored offshore. That's where all the assistants come rowing out in boats trying to sell you all kind of junk. And the neat part about it was they only had one oar. They'd take the oar and put it on the back of the boat, and they just work it like this. And turn it, and the oar would turn in the water like this as they took it back. They'd push it one way, and then they turn the oar and push it that way. And they'd go like crazy with that. Well, in the scene, they had all these hawkers hawking all kind of stuff. And one guy was a painter, and he said, what do I do? What do you do? He said, I paint portraits. I said, you have anything to show me? So he showed me a bunch of portraits that he had in his boat. And he says, yeah, he says, I can do it in a day. And I said, okay. And I asked to have him come aboard. They gave me permission for him to come aboard. He painted a lot of pictures. Quite a few of them. And the only place it suited was one of the rooms up on the coast of the bridge, because it had more light. And so we went up there. It took him 2 hours. 2 hours to paint that. We went up to Naples, and we anchored at Naples. We anchored at a pier there, and we stayed there for quite a while. One of our trips around, Bob Klossinger and I, his ship was also in there at the same time. The first time I saw him since boot camp, over in Philadelphia. Yeah, we walked up to this damn thing. It must have been 100 steps. I had to pay $5 for a beautiful cameo. And I brought it back to the States, and I had a jeweler look at it and frame it for a necklace. And he said, I want to show you something about this cameo. So he brought it out and he put his magnifying glass down over top of it. He said, what do you see? The face? He said, do you see any eyelashes on it? I said, yeah. It was so small. It was about not quite the size of a quarter, oblong. Mm-hmm. But you could see the eyelashes on her face. It was so finely made. He said, this cameo is worth $400 anyhow. We went to Livorno, which is in English Leghorn, where the Leghorn chicken comes from. But anyhow, we went to the Naval Academy for a luncheon, and we had cookies, little cakes, and sodas and cheeses, all kinds of cheeses, some of it horrible, some good, and Italian soft drinks like Coke and stuff like that. What it tasted like Coke would be if you had no carbonation to it. It was not carbonated, non-carbonated drink. The next stop on the Italian coast was Monte Carlo, which is what the casino is there. The picture of the ship I have was taken from their home up on the hill. This friend of mine, a pair of us, said, we want to go uptown in Monte Carlo and get a real Italian dinner. Mm-hmm. So we went up in the city above the ship there, in that picture, and it's a couple blocks up, just a little restaurant, and we went in there and we're trying to order something. Boy, that was a mess trying to order something. The next thing you know, not a really old lady, but an older woman, she come walking over to us and she said, can I help you? Yeah.
English.
Somebody speaks English. So she says, sure, I can help you order. She said, I'll order something nice for you. So she did. She said, can I sit with you? Yeah, sure. So they started talking, and we said, well, do you live here? Yeah, I've lived here for quite a few years. I retired and came here. And he said, well, where are you from in the States? He said, Mississippi. They got to talking about things from the town and things, like old friends meeting it. And it was really neat. She said, did you go to the casino yet? We said, no, they won't let us in there. You can't go in there in uniform. And we don't have any civilian clothes with us. Oh, she said, you come back here tomorrow. She said, I'll have some clothes for you. So we went back there to that restaurant, and she had some clothes. So she just showed us around a little bit, put a couple of chips. We didn't stay very long because we figured they're going to figure out that we weren't here to gamble. From Italy, we went to Cyprus, and it was a town called Famagusta. It was inside of a bay, and we went in there and anchored the ship, and we found out the significance of this particular bay was a place where the German Navy repaired their submarines, that they would go submerged somewhere off the coast and go underwater through tunnels into Cyprus, into this bay, before they would resurface. And all of their repair facilities were in the sides of the mountain, so you couldn't see it from the air. We were in Famagusta, Cyprus, and from there we went to the coast of Palestine. And we were there to patrol the coast and keep the refugee ships of Jews coming from Europe coming into Palestine. And we had to intercept the ships and send them back out to sea.
And did you do that a lot? Was there a lot of them?
Yeah, we did it for about weeks, couple of months.
Wow.
And then other ships would come in. Yeah, very sad, because a lot of those ships, they had enough of fuel to get it there. They didn't have enough fuel to go back. So they'd go out and they would be dead at sea, and they'd either get picked up or die. Some of the ships were sinking already. They were taking on water, and they'd say, we can't go back out. We're taking on water. We're sinking. That's your problem. Turn around.
Oh.
But we were in Haifa at the time. We were anchored in the harbor, and we had a couple boats. We only had 2 boats, ferrying back and forth from the dock to the ship. It wasn't very far, but when we went over one time and they were coming back, when we left the dock, these Jewish settlers started shooting at our boats, at our little rowboats, not rowboats, they're motor-powered boat. And boy, red flags went up then. Our ship went to battle stations, because if they kept shooting and they sank one of them boats, they were going to get blown off the dock. Yeah, we were going up and down the coast of Palestine. We had periods when we would stop the ship and go swimming. Now, when you say stop the ship, that doesn't mean you stop moving. That's a misconception. You go swimming, and if you swim too far off from the ship, the next thing you know, the ship is drifting away from you. It happened to me. I swam out too far, and the damn wind come up, and the damn ship started to go shh, because it's a big sail in the water. So I'm swimming like crazy trying to catch it. I catch up with it. They had what they called two big boards. They hang them down over the side of the ship, down almost to water level, so you could grab them and get up on them, and then go up the ladder to the ship. And so I swam my ass off until I caught up to that thing. And one of the guys thought he was being a hot shot. Said, "Hey, Zig, you like swimming?" He kicked my hands off the board. Anyhow, when we were patrolling the coast, we went to and anchored in Beirut Harbor. And on the same side of the harbor, quite a ways down, was Hitler's super yacht. And really nice and a very big boat. It ain't a boat, it's a ship. We went to Rhodes, Greece. You know the significance of Rhodes, Greece? The Colossus of Rhodes.
Right. Oh, right.
The big statue that was across the harbor, standing, saddling the harbor's entrance. It's not there anymore, but that's what its significance.
Oh.
So we went in there. We went in there, I think, for one day. We headed for Port Said, Egypt, for a short stay, and then headed home, and we stopped at Malta on the way out of the Mediterranean. And from there, it was steady sailing all the way back to the States. But when we were going over, it took longer to get there because we were doing all kinds of war maneuvers with other ships. There was a lot of ships out there, rescue guards for aircraft carriers, for planes that didn't make it up when they come off the deck. They didn't all go up. Some of them went down. And so they had to have somebody out there to pick them up. And we'd run alongside of them when we could. Can you believe it? That little ship, with all the power it had, about 32 knots, I think they could go with that. And at that time, an aircraft carrier, as big as it was, could do 38 to 39. Well, I stood what they call watches, like a guard duty, but it isn't that. You actually are operating the ship. I did most of mine in the engine room, but I didn't have anything to do with the propulsion turbines. That's out of my expertise. But I did have training on Griscom-Russell solar cell evaporators. That's the name of a company that makes an evaporator that makes fresh water out of salt water.
Oh.
So I ran them, And we had two of them, one in each engine room. But on top of that, then you had all kind of valves and stuff pertaining to propulsion and other steam-operated devices aboard ship that you had to monitor the pressure and the temperature on what the sailing circumstances. And so that's what I did most of the time. That's what my watch stations. Now, if my regular job when I wasn't doing watch stuff, I was in charge of two diesel engine generator rooms. There had one up in the front of the ship, one back in the aft, and go down the walkway and open up a hatch and go down in another step down, and down there was a great big diesel engine generator. And in case the power got knocked out, or they lost steam or anything, you start the generators and you have power. Well, that was my job, maintain them,
Okay.
maintain the proper maintenance and oil changes and all that kind of crap. And periods of, had a time schedule. You're supposed to run them so long every day. Make sure that the automatic switches work. And also, we had two, what they call them, whale boats. They were about the size of a whaler's boat. They're pretty big. And they had small diesel engines, little four-cylinder diesel engines. And I was responsible for the maintenance of them too. Food was good if you could keep track of it. You get in rough weather, you got to keep it going up or it keeps going down. Give it back. I'll tell you how rough it was. You know how big an aircraft carrier is. You have no conception until you're alongside of it. And we're just a little tiny thing. We had an injured guy. One of the waves slammed him against the depth charge racks in the back and hurt his back. And so they were trying to put him over on the aircraft carrier with a breeches boy, pulleys and ropes back and forth.
Really?
Put him in a basket, and you would hook it up to pulleys and ropes, and you'd pull it over to the other ship. So we're trying to get the ropes attached. Now you're trying to get these ropes attached, and the safest way to do it is to run counter to the waves. In other words, the waves are going like this. Usually you're going through them like this because that's the most stable way to do it. But to do this rope thing, you had to go aside of one another. Well, here, one minute, the aircraft carrier's up here and you're looking at the bottom. And then it goes, and then they're looking at your bottom. So they just couldn't get it done. And then they decided not to do it and they were going to split up and try some other method of getting him on. Helicopters weren't as popular then. We got in this trough and we're sliding down. Over here's the aircraft carrier. The aircraft carrier, and we're about to start up when the aircraft carrier starts coming up. But he didn't get down yet. We're going up and he's coming down to the bottom and we're down there. So what they call a gun sponson. Well, we're down in the trough and here comes the aircraft carrier. One of them big gun sponsons got us just about midship where our lifeboat was. See, it's just about midship. And proceeded to tear everything off that side of the ship all the way back to the stern. It crushed the boat, ground it up into little pieces. So the aircraft carrier was against it, and the boat was right in between. And it was going, and the pieces flying, tearing everything, the superstructure. I was standing on the deck right across, about halfway back between the boat and the stern, because I wouldn't know what was going on. So I went out on the deck. I just held onto the railing. They got railings all along that. They torqued the piece right across from me, 10 feet across from me, it wiped right off because it cracked our hull too. Unfortunately, it was right over my bunk. It was nice. You could see him going over the waves, and you see the crack open. You see a little bit of light shine through, and then it go bloop, it was shut again. It was a little scary too. But anyhow, they sent us to Boston for repairs, and we were going clapping. We're not going to stay up there. We're going to go down there and get a couple months in Boston. You know, we can have a little time. We get down there and we pull into this pier and tie up. We looked at the other side of the pier, and sitting on the other side of the pier is a ship exactly like ours. They took one out of mothballs and brought it into the yard, the shipyard. And they cut the exact stuff that was damaged on ours off with torches, and they cut that piece off the other destroyer, brought it over and welded it on ours. We were only there a month. We were really disappointed. Incidentally, the aircraft carrier that we had the little incident with was the USS Roosevelt. In the fall, in Newport, getting ready to go sail to England. And in the meantime, your mother went to, and I was going to try to get leave and stuff to come home, and I told her they didn't want to give me leave and what have you, and she went and saw Congressman Goodling. She went to talk to him to see if I could get me some leave to come home for her birth. So I got the leave, and I came home. I had 2 weeks. They gave me no date to come back, but I happened to know when we were going to sail for England was on the 3rd, I think, the 2nd or the 3rd of January. And when I went back from leave and went aboard ship, I wasn't late because there was no date when I could back. I just come back the morning they were going to leave. So I got the boat. It had a big whaleboat. When they took me out to the ship, I went aboard ship, and the officer of the day said, "Here's your orders, here's your clothes, goodbye." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're being transferred. Here's your papers and your clothing." They broke into my locker and packed all my clothing, and I went back down, got in the boat, and went back ashore. And then I opened my papers, my transfer papers, and I was transferred to Naval Ordnance Plant, York, Pennsylvania. So I had just went home, left the day before, and I come back the next morning. Come back home. Well, matter of fact, I come home that night because I got the train back. And I go home that night, late night. She said, "What are you doing home?" I told her, said, "I'm transferred to the Naval Ordnance Plant." I said, "How did that happen?" She said, "Well, I talked to Governor Goodling, or Senator, Congressman Goodling." I'll get it. And that was a real surprise. Karen was born on 1426 West Market Street, and I had an apartment there on the 2nd floor. After Karen was born, I went to York Training Center, York Reserve Training Center. For here I am, only a few years in the service, and I'm trying to train people that went through the war and aboard ship, and they know all this stuff, but I couldn't tell them anything. But it was a nice time, and it was good. I learned a lot too. So they decided to remove all regular Navy from reserve training centers. So they sent me to a ship in Philadelphia, which was converted from a medical rescue vessel to a training vessel, and to train reservists. So we would go from Philly to Bermuda every 2 weeks. Pretty nice stuff, that worked out nice. And I was assigned to USS Toka, tugboat, a yard tugboat, which frequently went down to the lighthouse in the Chesapeake Bay and brought ships in. and also fought two major fires. There was a fireboat in two. There was a oil refinery along the Delaware River that caught on fire. We went down there and provided water and support, and that was a Charone Mobile vacuum packing company, and made paraffin. You should have saw that. The water coming out of that hot building had a 6-inch layer of paraffin on top of it. What a mess. But anyhow, then we fought another fire, a tanker fire that was in the Chesapeake Delaware Canal, if you're familiar with that. Tanker got caught fire in there, and they tied it up where there was no houses or anything, and it was burning, and that they wanted it out. So we went down there with a tugboat, and I don't know, a couple hundred cans of fomite. So we're trying to put this fire out, and we got it just about out. No, not me. I'm in charge of running the ship and the pumps, and but the other guys that went down with us, we took extra people with us, and they were fighting this fire. They had it just about out. It was only any fire in the stern of the ship. They had it all out. The Coast Guard come along and said, "Pull all your men out. Get out of here. You're done." They said, "It's still burning." They said, "That's too bad. Get out." Said, "You're getting all that fomite on the river, on the canal," and they get phone calls by the hundreds from the people that live along the canal. I got home from Philly, and Elaine come running down. She says, "Oh, you just missed them." I said, "I just missed who?" She said, "Alan just took Charone to the hospital for she's having a baby." And then he came home later and told us what was what. And I said, "Well, how about taking me back in?" "Well, you'd have to wait till I dry the seat out a little bit." So her water broke on his passenger seat, and the seat was all wet. And he took me back in.
And was I born already?
I think you were. You were in the delivery room. I didn't see it, or they didn't allow you to come in there then. They wouldn't let you anywhere near that. Then after the tugboat, I got kicked around. I went to Dayton, Ohio. I was sent out there to be driver for an animal at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He was a Navy representative to the Air Force at Wright-Patterson. He transferred me back to Philadelphia Naval Air Station. So I got put in charge of. You ever see those generators they use to take out to the airplane to get it started? That's in a cart with the generator on it. That gives them extra power to start their engines. They put me in charge of them. They had about 20 of them. They had to make sure they all were fueled and ready to go and were in good shape enough to go out and maintain them. I saw experiments with the ejection seats, and I saw them experimenting with the new steam-powered catapults for airplanes, and also how much stress airplanes and aircraft carriers would take. I was in Philadelphia, and I got transferred to Shore Patrol in the 4th Naval District, not just Philadelphia. 4th Naval District, all of Pennsylvania, parts of New Jersey, part of Delaware, and all Ohio. So we traveled all over there picking up prisoners. When I was on the tugboat, I was a first-class petty officer, and the tug master, I was a chief engineer, and the tug master was also a first-class petty officer. And we were living it up. We had staterooms and everything. But there was a little Italian guy, a good friend of mine, Victor Pietro Barsati. And he was always grumbling at me because I was telling him what to do and bossing him around, and he wasn't the only one. I had four other guys under me, and he said, "You didn't like it and all that." I said, "Well," I told him, I said, "Well, if you think I'm bad," I said, "wait till you leave here, because you won't stay here. You're going to get on a bigger ship, I'm sure, And if you do, you're going to find out how much power somebody my rate has aboard a ship, aboard a big ship. So years later, a couple of years later, that ship was in the yard down at Norfolk. So I went to the aircraft carrier and went aboard. So this guy took me down. He brought him back and he said, "Oh, Ziegler, what the hell are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I came to see you. You're first class. Get out of here. Get out of here. I don't want you to see me be seen with you." So he hustled me out, took me to a kind of isolated place in the ship and got to talk. He said, "Man," he said, "aboard this ship you don't even talk to petty officers." He said, "A first class petty officer, a chief petty officer has their own mess, has their own place to eat, and their own quarters." I said, now you know, eh? I was in shore patrol in Philadelphia. They were gearing up for a landing in Korea, and they were wanting personnel for them little landing crafts. They need engineers to run the landing craft in. I said, that's gun fodder. I got kids to worry about. Well, I went down to Washington, and I went to the Bureau of Naval Personnel, a great big building, and I walked in. I said, "I want to see the seashore transfer desk." I don't know, the third floor. Da 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 da. I'm walking down the aisle of this big building, and I hear this guy saying, "Hey Zig, hey Zig." I said, "Who knows me down here?" And really, I was really shocked. So to see this guy standing at this desk waving at me. So I walked over and I said, "How do you know me?" He said, "Well," he said, "you don't recognize me." I said, "Not really." He said, "I was on the power with you. I was in the office on the power." I said, "Holy crap." Yeah, now I remember it, but I said, I could never put you together. So anyhow, then he asked me what I wanted. I told him. And that's when he found a spot in Portugal. But turns out that I had too many children. Had the right rating, but there were too many children. So he wouldn't send me over there. So he got me a seafaring ship on Lake Michigan. That's how I got on a reserve training ship again. He thought that was a good fit too, because I've been in so many reserve training. He said, "It sounds like you're a good teacher or something that you get on all these uh, teaching jobs." I said, "I don't know about that." Charone decided that she would come out.
She took the
She
train
took the
from York.
train with 3 children from York to Chicago, and I met her in Chicago. And she said, "Oh, people helped me all the way along." So we held the kids and entertained them and fed the baby. Said she had actually, she said she had a pretty good time. It was pretty stressful, but I had a good time. And I got a house for her. It wasn't in Benton Harbor. It was a mile or so away, and then another mile down to the lake. So anyhow, it was a nice place. We had a private beach. We had a prowler who was looking in the windows, going around to the houses looking in. And a couple of times he tried to get in our place. He tried the door a couple of times, and she was scared as hell. And I had a 32 automatic at that time, and I taught her how to shoot. Took her down to the lake and taught her how to shoot it. And one of the other ladies said, "Well, he's been pretty regular here late." She said, "What I'm going to do," said, "I'm going to let you have our dog." Left her have the golden retriever. He barked a couple times and growled and stuff. And so she talked to the girls, and the next day, all this was really getting on all their nerves because he'd go to all their houses. And so a day or so later, they saw a guy back in the woods. He says he was picking mushrooms. So when they saw him and he noticed that they saw him, he took off in the other direction. And but the only way he could get out of that area in a car was past our house. So the girls went back in the house, and two of them had rifles that belonged to their husbands, and they brought the rifles out. I don't remember whether they were loaded or not, but they brought them out, and there was three women. The two of them stood out on the road, and your mother took all the kids and got them in the house together, and they stood out in the middle of the road. And this guy come driving up, and they stopped him right in the tracks, pointed their rifles at him, told him to stop and get out of the car. Well, he got out of the car and everything, and said, what's wrong? What's wrong? He said, I'm just back there picking mushrooms. Well, let's see your mushrooms. Well, I didn't get any today. Yeah. So anyhow, and then Sharon called the cops too when they saw him coming, stopped him, and called the police, and they came and they arrested him, took him in. Big headline newspaper the next day. Housewives threatened to shoot prowler. The landing craft, or the ship I was on, we had orders to go down to the Mississippi and sail around to Florida, Green Cove Springs, Florida. The Chicago River used to empty into Lake Michigan. But because of the pollution in the Chicago River, they reversed the flow, put gates in, wouldn't let it flow into the lake. So in order to get in there, we had to have those gates open, and then there's two of us, two ships, get both ships in, and they could close the gate again. And we sailed down the Chicago River, which that turned into the Illinois waterway. We didn't draw enough water to Mississippi to do that. But the Illinois River wasn't as big as the Codorus Creek. It was a little deeper, but it wasn't as big. It was deeper all the way down, but it wasn't as wide. Some places it wasn't as wide. And so when the mechanics or the hydraulics, rather, of the movement of a ship through the water is the propellers draw the water towards the ship and discharge it in back of it. That's how it moves forward. And when it does that in a narrow confines like a Codorus Creek, that water piles up maybe 5, 6 foot high in a big wave behind the ship. So you're going down the water, down the river, and you got this big 6 foot wave coming right behind you. That's 6 foot up on the banks. So here we're going down there, and here we see this guy on his fishing pole sitting on the bank fishing, and he sees us coming, and he sees this wave of water, and he grabs his stuff and starts up the bank, and he doesn't get up there quick enough, and the water hit him in the ass and threw him the rest of the way up the bank. Another place where there was a guy out in the boat, the water, the river spread out, but it was very, very shallow down there. This guy's in this boat in shallow water, fishing or crab, I don't know what he's doing. Here comes that big wave. And he's going like this, rowing like hell. After a while, he's sitting on the bottom and he's still going like this. It took the water right out from under his boat.
And then what?
Well, when the wave hit him, it rolled him over. We stopped. I can't remember all the towns. There was one up close to where we went into the Mississippi. We stopped overnight, and then we sailed. I think we sailed down. I don't know whether we did it in one day or not. We were in St. Louis. Then we went out on the Gulf of Mexico, and just happened to be, I don't know why it was that time of year or what, but you don't know what a groundswell at sea or in a large body of water is. You get big high waves, and they call them ground swells. So this ship we were on, and a lot of them. You get down in the trough between two swells, and you start up the hill. It's like starting up a hill. The hill's coming to you while you're coming to it, and you're going like this, and you're trying to get up. That ship would go up like this, we get up close to the top, and it'd be shaking like you had any coffee in your hand, it would disappear out of your cup. You were jumping so hard, everything's jumping like this. Get up to the top of that hill, and then the bow would outweigh the stern, and it would go boom on the other side.
There goes your
Yeah, boom, there goes the coffee cup and all. But boy, I mean, that really battered it. It split the hull a couple places. Fortunately, yeah, we got cracks. It cracked across the deck. It didn't go down around, just went across the deck. It kept bending like this. Just did the deck in. We went up the East Coast to Jacksonville, and the St. Johns River comes through Jacksonville and empties into the ocean. So we went into St. Johns River to a place called the Green Cove Springs, where they had a couple hundred ships of all kinds that were out of commission there. And we were put into a dock space and tied up. In the meantime, I didn't even know it till we were on the way across the Gulf that the captain was sick. But they said he was spending most of his time in his stateroom. He said he was too sick to be up in the bridge. So he left the ship as soon as we got tied up. They took him off. They brought an ambulance down, took him off. He had about half of his intestines removed. He had cancer. He had an account for everything on the ship. If you didn't have it on this list and you didn't have it, you had to get it. So you had to order a lot of stuff. If you had something that didn't belong on there, you had to get rid of it. And then, you had to put protective coatings on everything. Like anything metal or anything like that, you should hear the Army say about cosmoline. Well, we used virtually the same thing on tools and all that. All the tools, you had to be all cosmoline, wrapped in certain paper or certain kind of paper. And books and stuff had to be bound shut so that they wouldn't come open. And special material, special wrappings, everything. Like I said, if it belonged there, it had to be preserved and put in places where it'll be in dehumidified air. After the decommissioned ship, I was reassigned to LSD-2. You can sink it part way and then drive a small craft right inside of it and close the gates and pump the water out and haul them wherever they want to go. Usually it's to the battlefield or the beach. Well, I was assigned to a water making apparatus to make fresh water, distilling plant, and which wasn't there. Everything was in the shipyard being reconditioned, and I was expected to put it all together. I didn't even know where it was. I saw that out to the end, and when they had it back together and running, apparently my job there was ended, and then I was assigned to be the master at arms. In other words, I was a ship's policeman. Stayed on there until I got discharged. By this time, I already had quite a family. I had 3 children that didn't see me very often, and I didn't see them. I missed them. You can't be in the Navy and be a father at the same time because it don't work. So I gave up a promising career for my family, and I never regretted that.